Hello, and welcome to the video for one man's award-winning green chili recipe. A number of years ago, I posted a video here on YouTube called One Man's Green Chili, and it was just my attempt to share my love for green chili with a recipe that I had been using for a number of years. I grew up on green chili. My mom used to make it when I was a kid. I grew up in the Denver area though, so Denver has its own green chili culture, but I am now living in Pueblo, which is the chili capital of Colorado and home of the famous, or soon to be famous, Pueblo chili. I was surprised by how many views and likes that green chili recipe got, and it got quite a number of comments, and people seem to appreciate it. Fast forward a few years, and I've been perfecting my recipe since then, and for many years I'd wanted to enter into the Pueblo Chili and Frijoles Festival chili contest. The Pueblo Chili and Frijoles Festival was created almost 30 years ago. 2023 was the 29th annual Chili Fest, and next year is going to be the 30th. This is an annual event that attracts 150,000 people or more to the city of Pueblo, where you have farms bringing their roasters out, and they're roasting bushel after bushel after bushel of chili for hungry fest-goers to come and buy and take home. Plus you have food vendors that will serve you chilies fixed any number of ways. It's just a fun time here in the fall, celebrating the harvest of chilies in general. A few years ago, the Chili Fest created a competition to determine who has the best chilies and salsas. There are two different main categories. There is the commercial category, which is open to those that operate restaurants and sell their chili commercially. And then there's the non-commercial category, which is, people in their homes making chili for their friends and families. And that's me. I entered the non-commercial category. Within the competition, there are categories for green chili, red chili, and salsa. I wasn't sure how well my chili would do in the competition. I'm up against some heavy competition. There are people that their families have been making these chili recipes for generations. Me, I've only been making chili for maybe 2 decades at most. It's not a family recipe, it's just one that I've developed over the years and that I like, and it's got the elements in it that I prefer. Now, keep in mind, when I make chili, I often change it up. I don't necessarily measure ingredients, and I don't follow any recipe. I just make whatever I feel, and I'll, as I said, change things up. I'll use ground pork, or I'll use chunks of pork. This year, though, entering the chili contest, there are rules. And the main rule is that you have to use Pueblo chilies from a registered farm. So this means you can't use Anaheim, you can't use Hatch, obviously. You have to use the variety, the Pueblo chili itself. Now, you can imagine my surprise when they called my name for first place. I was on edge, standing there listening to the winners of the commercial category, and I figured, if I'm lucky, I'll get 3rd place. But 3rd place came, didn't call my name. 2nd place came, didn't call my name. And then 1st place, and they announced my name. I was stunned, I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it. Now, the recipe that I made is different than that original recipe, hence the need for this new video. And those of you that have been interested in this recipe, this video is for you. But I also hope this video finds those of you that aren't familiar with green chili or what it is. So without further ado, let's get into the recipe. First, you'll want to dice up about half of a large white onion. This should give you around 4 ounces. 4 ounces is what I submitted in the official recipe. Now, some of you may be shocked by the onions that I'm adding because in my original recipe, I did not include onions. But what can I say? In the intervening years since I recorded that original video, I've learned to enjoy cooking with onions and eating them. Next, Mince 5 large cloves of garlic. This should give you about a third of an ounce or so. A third of an ounce is what I used in the official submitted recipe. Now it's time to prepare the pork. Put 2 tablespoons of a neutral cooking oil in the bottom of your stock pot on medium heat. Then put in a pound of diced pork. In this case, I'm using picada de puerco from a local meat market, El Rodeo, down on Northern Avenue, for those of you in Pueblo. I prefer diced pork over anything else in the green chili. I know some people prefer big chunks of pork. I'm just not a fan of it, but if you want to use some form of a shoulder roast or something like that and cube it, that's fine. If you want to use ground pork, I've done that before as well. It's entirely up to you. Brown the pork for 5 minutes or even a little longer if you want to. It's entirely up to you. And when you're ready, clear a little spot in the middle. This will give you a place to put the onions and the garlic. Now you want to continue to cook them with the pork for a few minutes, but try not to let them burn. Just cook them until the onions are translucent. Once the onions are translucent, add half a cup or 3 ounces of all-purpose flour. This is a shortcut that I learned from my mother, and she from her mother ages ago. I use the same trick with my sausage gravy for biscuits and gravy. It's a nice time saver, and I think it works just as well as a regular roux. Now, you can go the regular roux route if you want to, but how you want to fix it is entirely up to you. Brown the flour on the pork and onions for up to a couple of minutes, and once you're satisfied, it's time to add your liquids. 4 cups of cold chicken stock goes into the pot. The reason I'm using cold chicken stock is because if you use a hot liquid on a flour-based roux, you'll immediately get these lumps, these small little dumplings that'll form in there. You won't be able to whisk them out. It's a pain, and it doesn't make a very attractive dish. If you use cold liquids on the roux, however, you're not going to get those lumps. I prefer chicken stock. I just like the flavor of it. I know some of the locals that I've talked to around here prefer to make it with just water, and that's fine. I've also used a vegetable-based stock in the past for friends that wanted vegetarian or vegan versions of my chili. It's entirely up to you what you want, but just remember the official recipe calls for 4 cups of chicken stock. The last liquid I'll add is 1 cup of filtered water. The reason I'm adding just water and not chicken stock is because I don't want the chicken stock to overpower the flavor. But with a half cup of flour, it's still a little bit thicker than I prefer, and so for this recipe, I added just 1 cup of water. However, if you like it thicker, leave the cup of water out. Increase the heat to high and allow the mixture to come to a boil. In this way, the flour will thicken it and you'll be ready to add your chilies. Add in 4 pounds of roasted chopped Pueblo green chilies, along with a 14.5-ounce can of fire-roasted petite diced tomatoes, which I've already mixed in with the chilies here. Now you may be thinking, 4 pounds? That's crazy. That's a lot of chili, and yes, it is. I normally fix my chili with 2 pounds, sometimes 3 pounds, but I've never done 4 pounds until this recipe. But I always feel like a lot of people don't put enough green chili into it, and it's called green chili for a reason. Green chilies are the star of the show. So I really wanted to impress the judges here, and I put in 4 pounds of chilies. Apparently the judges approved. The final ingredients I add are the seasonings: 1 tablespoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. You're welcome to adjust these to your taste. It's entirely up to you, but just keep in mind that these are the official amounts that were submitted with the award-winning recipe. At this point, you can do one of 2 things. You can either reduce the temperature and let the chili simmer lid on the stove for an hour or more, but you have to make sure that you stir to keep the bottom from sticking and burning with all that flour in it. So what I do is I preheat the oven to 325 degrees, and I will cook the chili in the oven for an hour up to an hour and a half. And that way I don't have to worry about burning the bottom. Southern Colorado and northern New Mexico are tightly intertwined through culture, especially through food. This goes back to the 1830s and 1840s. The Spanish had settled in New Mexico, especially northern New Mexico, in the 17th century, but they never made their way into what's now Colorado to establish settlements and to move people here. It was still very much a backwater, a frontier. And by the 1830s and 1840s then, the Spanish are granting land grants to folks in northern New Mexico that then prompts them to come up and move to places like the San Luis Valley or southeastern Colorado. They're going to come up here to farm, to raise sheep, to raise families, and they bring their culture with them. And an important part of that culture is food. Green chili is a culturally important part of the cuisine of Colorado and New Mexico. Outside of these two states, you'll rarely find it. There are places in the western United States I've run across it, for instance in Wyoming, but it's not the same, and you'll miss it if you leave it behind, if you've grown up on it. It's probably derived from the Mexican dish chile verde, which translates as green chili, but it's not the same dish. Chile verde is made with tomatillos as its base, and then you add green chilies to it, but it's tomatillos that make it green. And while chile verde is a delicious dish on its own, it's not green chili as we know it in this part of the country. The history of chilies in Pueblo County goes back to at least the late 1840s or the early 1850s. In 1842, a trading post was established on the Arkansas River, the border between Mexico and the United States, and it was named El Pueblo. And the residents here grew chilies as one of the crops that they used to subsist on. Chilies are grown in the 1890s by Italian farmers that moved along the lower Arkansas River here in Pueblo County. The Pueblo chili is a specific variety of chili. It's derived from a mirasol chili. Mirasol meaning inside of the sun. Mirasol chilies grow with their points up instead of points hanging down on the plant like they're reaching to the sun. A farmer by the name of Michael Bartolo was growing some seeds of the mirasol plant, and in 1994 he noticed a specific variation on this, and he named the chili Moscow after his uncle. However, over time it became known as the Pueblo chili, and it's the pride and joy of Pueblo farms and kitchens across the county. Now, let's get into this argument just a little bit that has developed in Colorado and New Mexico about which is superior, the Pueblo chili or the Hatch chili. Now, granted, Hatch has a much longer history and thus is more well known. I would venture to say that people in New York City have heard of the Hatch chili. Pueblo chilies really in the last 2 decades have been coming into their own, and they're being served in restaurants all over the county and in places throughout the state. They're being sold in stores like Whole Foods, but they have yet to gain the reach that the Hatch chili has and to gain the fame that the Hatch chili has. Does this mean the Hatch is superior? No. Does it mean the Pueblo chili is superior? No. I am going to be quite controversial and say that they're both good chilies. They're both wonderful chilies. They have their own unique flavor and characteristics and heat levels, but they're equally deserving of a spot in your kitchen, in your cooking. So I'm only going to say this, that there's enough room for both in this world, And this friendly rivalry, as long as it stays a friendly rivalry, that's okay. You know, we can leave it at that. But I like to think that, you know, we're doing this rivalry tongue-in-cheek. Okay, well, it's been an hour and a half, so we'd better take the chili out of the oven and check it. And now, for the moment of truth. Oh, yes. That's some award-winning green chili right there. There's so many different ways you can enjoy your green chili. You can eat it straight out of a bowl with some fresh tortillas. I mean, just simplicity like that is wonderful. You can smother enchiladas or a bean burrito as I'm doing here. In fact, in Pueblo restaurants, you can get almost anything smothered in green chili. By far, the most popular way to eat green chili here in Pueblo is in the form of a slopper, which is a cheeseburger smothered in green chili. This local delicacy has two claimants to its origin story, Gray's Coors Tavern and the Sunset Inn. Like the origin stories of so many local delicacies around this country, it's murky and contested. But it doesn't matter. Pueblo has wholeheartedly adopted the Pueblo slopper as its own, and you can find it in every restaurant that serves green chili and hamburgers. All right, let's give it a taste. That is so good. Spicy, right amount of heat for me. Get my lips and tongue tingling. Start me on that capsaicin high, that chili high. Strong green chili flavor, those coming through, because remember, the chilies are the star of the show. This is exactly what you'd expect to find in an award-winning Pueblo green chili recipe. Give it a try sometime. I think you'll like it. Enjoy.